All right, let's jump right in. We're about to bust some of the biggest myths about learning. So if you've ever thought that being smart is just something you're born with, well, you might want to stick around. We're going to unpack a scientifically backed toolkit that could completely change how you master any skill you want.
Does this feel familiar? You spend hours, maybe all night, cramming for a test or practicing a new skill, and then, poof, it's gone. It feels like you're pouring all this knowledge into a bucket with a giant hole in it. It is one of the most frustrating feelings in the world, right?
Well, here's the good news. The problem isn't you. It's not that you lack talent or aren't smart enough. It is almost certainly because the methods most of us were taught, rereading our notes, highlighting every other sentence, are, frankly, pretty terrible. The issue isn't the student, it's the strategy.
So to fix our strategy, we first need to know what we're up against. And in the world of learning, our main opponent actually has a name. It's time to meet the reason why our brains seem so good at, well, forgetting everything we try so hard to learn.
This is it, the forgetting curve. It was first described way back in the 1880s by a psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus. And what he found was a fundamental truth about our minds. If we don't make an active effort to remember new information, our ability to recall it just drops off a cliff. It's not a bug, it's just a natural feature of our brains.
And it's pretty shocking how fast this happens. I mean, look at this. After just one day, you might only hold on to 40% of what you learned. Fast forward to the end of the week, and you're lucky if you can even recall 20%. This isn't a personal failure. This is just your brain's default setting.
Okay, I know. That curve looks pretty scary. But here's the thing. It is not invincible, not even close. In fact, we have some really powerful weapons we can use to flatten that curve out and lock information into our long-term memory. Let's look at the first one. Our first weapon is probably the single most important change you can make. It's this. You have to stop passively pushing information into your brain. Instead, you need to start actively pulling it out. This is the whole idea behind active recall. Think about it this way. It really is like weightlifting for your brain. Every single time you force your brain to retrieve a piece of information, you are strengthening the neural pathway to it. You're doing a rep. Passively rereading your notes, that's just like watching someone else lift weights at the gym. It does absolutely nothing for you. You have to do the heavy lifting yourself.
So here's where it gets practical. On the left, you've got the stuff that feels productive but really isn't. Rereading, highlighting. And on the right, you've got the active methods that actually work. So after you read a chapter, close the book and try to summarize it out loud. Turn the main ideas into questions and test yourself. These are the things that build real, durable memories.
Okay, so you're using active recall to build those memories. Fantastic. But now, how do you make sure they stick around for good? Well, our second weapon, spaced repetition, is the perfect defense against that forgetting curve we saw earlier. And it's all about timing. Here's the secret. Instead of cramming all at once, you review the material at specific, increasing intervals of time. Every time you successfully remember something right when you were on the verge of forgetting it, you send this incredibly powerful signal to your brain. It's like saying, hey, pay attention, this is important, don't throw it out. So what does a schedule like this actually look like? Well, you might do your first review session a day after you learn something new. The next one could be 3 days later, then maybe a week after that, and so on. Each time you do this, you push that forgetting curve further and further back, making that memory stronger and more permanent. So we have ways to build a memory and to retain it. But what about getting to that deep, true understanding? That's where our third and final weapon comes into play. The Feynman technique. It's named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman, and it's all about achieving real comprehension. The entire idea is captured perfectly in this one thought. The best way to know if you truly understand something is to try and explain it simply. If you find yourself using a bunch of jargon or your explanation gets all complicated, it's a huge red flag that you don't understand it as well as you think you do. True mastery is making things simple, and the process itself is just beautiful in its simplicity. First, you pick a concept you want to learn. Second, you try to teach it to a total beginner. You can even just pretend. Now, as you explain it, you'll immediately notice where you start to get stuck or use fuzzy words. Aha! Those are your knowledge gaps. That's step 3.
So for step 4, you just go back to your source material, fill in those gaps, and then try to explain it again, but simply.
So those are our 3 big weapons. But here's the real magic. They aren't just individual tricks. They work together as a complete, powerful system. When you start combining them, it honestly feels like you've unlocked a learning superpower.
Let's look at how they all fit together in your personal learning stack. You use active recall to build that initial memory, to get it in the door. Then you use spaced repetition to make sure it stays there forever. And finally, you use the Feynman technique to make sure you don't just memorize facts, but that you understand them on a deep, fundamental level. If you take away only one thing from this, let it be this shift in your mindset. Effective learning is not some magical talent that only a few lucky people are born with. It is a practical skill. And just like any other skill, with the right techniques and a little bit of practice, it is something that absolutely anyone can master.
You now have the blueprint to learn smarter, not just harder. And this isn't just about acing your next exam. This is about finally learning that language, or picking up a musical instrument, or taking your career to the next level. So the only real question left is, where are you going to point this new superpower first? What will you master?